Hey guys, Dr. Snellgrove here, just recording a quick video for our Composition 2 class. This is for our poetry section, specifically situation and setting. And so the situation and setting, this is similar to the first section of poetry that went over before, that there's, XYZ number of poems in the book. And, we're not going to get to every single one of them, just like I don't get to every single one of them in the class, but selected ones I wanted to go over with you. So this, if you've got our portable 14th edition, situation and setting starts on page 465. But, if you don't, you can get these poems, other versions of the book, or just online. So I really wanted to look at some of them with you. All right. So let's see, I think I did a little share screen action before. Here we go. So the first one I wanted to look at with you is Rita Dove's Daystar. And so Daystar is this kind of, it's good, but it's also sad. Those often go hand in hand, I suppose, in poetry. Poem here. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I did want to, share screen so we can look at certain parts of it together. So this is basically a poem about the bleakness of, the American housewife, I guess you could say. So the idea that, the child, maybe more than one, but we know at least one child that she's responsible for taking care of. I guess at least two, because there's diapers, that'd be very young. And then maybe Liza's toddler wearing them. Anyway, so every day it's like she wanted a little room for thinking. She wants a room where, she could think, a space for herself. But everywhere she looks, it's like, crap, diapers over here I got to take care of. This kid left a doll over here I'm going to have to clean up. So she describes every day just bringing a chair behind the garage. So while it is children, plural, sit out the children's naps. So for 1 hour each day, she only gets 1 hour because one of the kids soon comes out after that and is, what are you doing down there? But it's like, what is she doing? She says that there were things to watch out there, like the pinched armor of a vanished cricket or a floating maple leaf. Other times she just closes her eyes until she sees only her own vivid blood. And she talks about the kid asking her, what are you doing down here? Why building a palace? So the idea is that this is her escape. It doesn't sound necessarily super fun to us, but this is her way of getting away from it all. And so I talk about a bleak poem. It talks about later that night when Thomas rolled over and lurched into her, she would open her eyes and think of the place that was hers for an hour, where she was nothing, pure nothing, in the middle of the day. So you get the idea. We don't know much about Thomas, but apparently sex with him is not super fulfilling. We know that. And so again, we get the idea that long after she has left that place, this is her place of mental escape. I don't think this term was really in vogue when this poem was first written necessarily, but this is basically the idea of a thought palace. That she has this place that she can go to and be empty, be transparent, be nothingness, and I mentioned this to the face-to-face students. It feels weird probably the first time you read it, where she says the place that was hers for an hour, where she was nothing, pure nothing, in the middle of the day. So it's one of those phrases, who wants to be nothing? That's not normally, a positive thing, but when does being nothing seem positive? Answer: when every day you're spending your whole life, the rest of your life, dedicated to being something for someone else. She has to be a parent to these children. She has to be Thomas's weird sex toy, the idea that she is something for everyone else. She can never be something for herself, but the next best thing, she can be nothing for 1 hour each day. It's her moment of zen. Okay. So what I want to follow that up with is a particularly weird poem called Humanity 101. And so this is something too, I was talking about it with the face-to-face classes, that the poem has a conceit that on paper, it makes it, maybe a little easier for the average college student to understand. At the same time, there's a lot going on here that can be a little difficult. So I wanted to help you unpack it. All right, so it begins with this idea that, someone's taking a class named Humanity 101, and they clarify, not humanities, humanity, like how to be a human, how to be a better human, perhaps. And so they fail the final, and the professor's like, you should take remedial humanity instead. So she gets the new professor, new class, remedial humanity, and talks about how he struggles with it because it's teaching him to understand these relative ideas about, like, comparing rich socialites in America to like starving kids overseas, cheerful stuff like that. Trying to figure out the cause of war, going out interacting with homeless people. And it's got this great bit where I went to see the professor during his office hours because I want to change my major. He asked, "Is that because your heart is being smashed?" He thought I should stick it out, that I could make it if I just escaped for an hour a day, blasting music into my earbuds or slumping in front of the TV. I said, "But that's just it. Now I see humanity everywhere, even on sitcoms, even in pop songs, even in beer commercials." All right, so there's a little bit, shades of the previous poem, shades of Rita Dove's Daystar here in Denise Duhamel's Humanity 101, where the professor's first advice is you just need to have something. You can have your own little 1 hour moment of Zen a day, even if that's just listening to an album on, some music, or turn on the TV. And the student tells them, like, but I'm still seeing humanity everywhere. I can't turn my brain off, and listen to this stuff or watch this stuff because I'm still thinking about everything I've learned. And this is where the poem takes another kind of weird turn, where the professor opens up. It says, "He showed me the scars under his shirt where he had been stabbed. He said I had to assume everyone had such a wound, whether I could see it or not." So I would argue that's the most important part of this poem, and I'm not dunking on the poet or anything, but it's a kind of basic idea. I'm willing to bet you've encountered this idea online yourself, right? The notion that everybody is dealing with some trauma of their own. Everyone is dealing with pain, of their own here, and you can't always see it, right? The wounds are not always visible. And so that's a way of kind of fostering our own humanity, right? So the idea of, hey, as long as you realize everyone is dealing, with their own stuff, if you're dealing with that, then yeah, you're going to be a better human. And that's what remedial humanity and Humanity 101 are all about. Okay. So I was looking, this one's a little, well, I guess I'll present it this way. So normally we just cover these poems one at a time, right? And so part of what is going on here with, what do you call it? Yeah, here we go. Part of what is going on here with the next two is they're talking to each other. So you've got the first poem is written by Christopher Marlowe. It's called The Passionate Shepherd to His Love. And so then years later, you got Sir Walter Raleigh writes The Nymph's Reply to the Shepherd. And so it's, I always joke with students that the original one, Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, it's basically the first, country song, because the idea is, okay, what do you call it? The shepherd is writing like a letter to a girl he fancies, right? And so he is shooting his shot. He's saying, come move out here, come move to the country and live with me. It's going to be so great. And, it's like he's anticipating her objections. So the whole poem is, let me tell you how great it's going to be once you start doing this. And so it's like, hey, come out here. I'll make you a bed of roses. He talks about all the great clothing. I'll make you a straw belt, make you these nice lined slippers, all of this fun stuff here. And then, what are we going to do for fun? We're going to sit out on the rocks when it's nice and warm. We are going to, watch the other shepherds. We're going to watch the sheep, all of this fun stuff here, right? And it's, so all of this is meant to sound good. Hey, if this moves you, come be with me and be my love. All of that fun stuff there. And then, though, many years later, Sir Walter Raleigh comes in kind of like a wrecking ball here, and he's like, all right, I'm going to write, what kind of letter would she have written back to this guy? And it's kind of brutal in its own way, because she's basically just systematically, in the new poem, she's just systematically dismantling all of the arguments that he was making there, right? The idea of, hey, yeah, sure, we'll sit on those rocks when it's warm and we'll watch the sheep, but it's going to get cold, buddy. All the stuff that you said you're going to make, you're going to make me a bed of roses. Well, that's not going to last forever. Quite literally, that is going to break down. So she talks about all the things that are going to wither, right? All of the things that are going to wither and die away in the cold. So it's really just kind of like the cold light of reality that she ends up shining on this guy. And so it makes for a very fascinating contrast because obviously you have your own opinion of this, but I was going to say that, what do you call it? When I talk about this with face-to-face my face-to-face students, most people kind of take her side, right? The idea of, okay, yeah, what do you call it? Like, I wouldn't necessarily want to move, leave the city behind, move everything out, and et cetera, et cetera. Like go out to the middle of nowhere to live with this person. And it's like, okay, that's not necessarily everyone's idea of a good time, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, just a little food for thought. Okay, so I had one more thing left to go over this, or one more poem I wanted to go over in this video, if y'all will bear with me. So it's Andrew Marvel's To His Coy Mistress. All right, and this is another nice and strange one. It looks like old-timey and fancy, and it's got rhymes, and all this stuff. And all of that disguises a fun fact about this poem, which is that the speaker is just crazy, uncontrollably horny. And so I'm being completely serious here. So the things that brings up, right, in the poem, is basically telling the girl, and I mean, I'm not trying to be a weirdo any more than usual. This is right there in the what do you call it? Poem. The reason she is a coy mistress, quote unquote, is the, what do you call it? She's not having sex with him. I mean, I wish there was a more clever, way of putting that. But I mean, that's it. He wants her to give it up. She is not giving it up. And so the beginning of the poem, it basically begins with this conceit: had we but world enough and time, right? So the idea is, if we were going to live forever, then I could spend centuries, I could spend millennia worshiping your body, telling you how great you are, and you deserve it, girl. You're worth all of that, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, he works up to the fact that, but we're not going to live forever. Because we're not going to live forever, we should get together right now. And at times the poem gets a little blunt, it gets a little gross. It talks about, like, hey, you're holding out, what's the point? Eventually you're going to be old and ugly and dead. And speaking of being dead, you're wanting to preserve your virginity. Well, worms are going to be going in your body as soon as you're dead. So, well, what's the point of holding out like this? And it ends with this. It's meant to be kind of an optimistic thing where he's saying that, hey, we should get together now while we're young, while we're passionate. And it ends on this interesting note of defiance where it's like, hey, we can't make time stand still. We can't freeze time. We can't live forever. So it has this ending line here: thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. So it's just such a wild, like, what do you call it? It is such a wild way of making a romantic gesture, right? A romantic move. And I had some face-to-face students just tell me straight up, like, I think this got to be creepy. I'm like, probably. I don't know if this would ever work in real life, but it is probably the most, the most effort anyone has ever gone into trying to get someone to get with them, at least that we know of. Don't tell me your stories. All right. So that's about it. Y'all know the deal. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to email me. Feel free to text me at 863-835-2399.